The hum of the gravity stabilizers droned low in the distance, barely masking the rhythmic thud of sparring weapons from the training hall below. Sunlight, artificial but finely tuned to mimic a G-type star, filtered through the transparent ceiling panels of the Intergalactic Combat Academy, casting long beams over a line of cadets seated cross-legged on the mat. All eyes were on Instructor Graxol, who stood tall and armorless, his skin a glinting bronze that caught the light like burnished steel. Graxol's voice rang clear. No species, under current biological constraints, can dual-wield with sustained precision. Coordination falters, efficiency drops. You do not divide your skill, you divide your failure. A few of the Threxian cadets clicked in agreement. The Cathari raised their long, split fingers in ritual salute. Everyone nodded. Everyone except Alex. Sitting near the end of the row, shoulder wrapped tightly in a compression sling that hugged one arm to his side, Alex leaned forward slightly. There was a quiet beat, one of those moments where a thought hovers like an insect on the rim of reason. Then he raised his hand. Instructor Graxol turned slowly, his eyes narrowing. Cadet Alexander Grant, you wish to challenge the principal? I don't mean to argue, Alex said, voice calm but strained. But there's a legend. From Earth. A swordsman who fought with 3 swords, 2 in hand, 1 in the mouth. The room burst into murmurs. Graxol lifted a single metallic hand, silencing them instantly. Explain, he said. Alex adjusted slightly, careful not to jar his shoulder. His name was Zanshin. Well, the real name's been lost. But he was said to have been born into the samurai tradition. After his family immigrated, the legend followed. My grandfather used to tell me stories. Zanshin fought duels blindfolded. He could balance a blade between his teeth so steadily he could parry a spear thrust. A Cathari cadet to Alex's right tilted his head. Why the mouth? Your species has only 2 arms. Why seek 3 weapons? Sometimes, Alex said, we reach for what shouldn't work, just to see if it might. Graxol's ridged brow creased. Do you claim lineage from this swordsman? Alex gave a one-shouldered shrug. Maybe, maybe not, but I'd like to try. You're injured. I'll adapt. There was a long silence. The room, full of species who measured tradition in millennia and innovation in cycles, stared at the single Earthborn with the stubborn fire in his eyes. Graxol stepped back. Demonstrate, then. A cadet handed Alex 2 standard weight training swords, polysteel and slightly blunt, but still dangerous if mishandled. Alex took one in his right hand. The other he grasped with effort in his left, securing it under the sling to hold it as tightly as he could. Then he knelt and picked up a 3rd sword, clamping it between his teeth, angled forward. The room collectively leaned forward. Alex bowed his head, took a breath, and moved. At first, it almost worked. The right-hand blade slashed forward in a diagonal cut. The left followed, slower but angled to catch the return. The mouth-held sword jerked forward as Alex twisted his head, but the balance was wrong. His injured shoulder lagged. A step faltered. The 3rd blade tipped sideways. His right arm overcompensated. He spun almost controlled, but then his foot skidded on the mat. He crashed backward, landing hard on his tailbone. The left-hand sword bounced away. The 3rd blade dropped from his mouth and clattered beside him. Silence. Alex groaned and lay flat, breath knocked out. His shoulder throbbed in protest. The impact hadn't dislocated it again, but it sent pulses of pain up his neck. Then, the laughter began. Not cruel, not entirely, but amused, disbelieving. A few cadets exchanged looks and mimicked the head thrust motion. One Trathali cadet made a sound like chewing. Graxol said nothing. He merely turned and keyed the display behind him, where the slide still read, "No species can dual-wield effectively. Triple-wielding," he added dryly, "remains a fantasy." Alex didn't move. He just stared up at the ceiling, letting the pain settle like silt. But behind the bruises and the echo of laughter, something flickered in his chest. He had seen it, just for a second. A move that worked. A rhythm. And that meant it wasn't impossible. 3 days later. The medical pod hissed as the compression field released. Alex sat up slowly, cradling his arm. The Academy medtech, a lean, silver-eyed Corvalli named Vesson, folded her long limbs and frowned. "You got lucky," she said. No re-dislocation, but you've inflamed the whole capsule. 2 weeks minimum before any high-strain movement. 6 if you want the full range back. Alex winced. What can I work on in the meantime? Vesson blinked. Walking, breathing, meditation, very gentle mobility. That's it. He nodded. All right. She studied him. That wasn't a typical fall. You were over-rotated and torsion imbalanced. What were you doing? Trying something new. Stop it. No. She sighed. You're going to ruin that shoulder. You humans don't have regrowth chambers like the Xarians. We can't reprint your nerves. You get one body. One. I'll be careful. You weren't. He smiled with half his face. Then I'll learn. 2 weeks later. Alex stood in front of the mirror in the rehab chamber, arm now out of the sling, hand gingerly curling around a light wooden dowel. The pain was still there, a tight coiled pressure, but it was manageable. Behind him, the hollow video played in a loop. A kata recorded from Earth archives an ancient samurai form, 2 blades. He mimicked it slowly, exaggerating footwork, letting each step fall with thought. The third sword rested on the bench. He didn't touch it yet. By the 4th week, he was gripping the sword by his teeth again. Not swinging, not slashing, just holding. Testing the neck muscles, the jaw tension, learning how not to chip his own teeth. By the 6th week, he could transition from a side guard stance to forward thrust, using all 3 weapons in slow motion. 9 weeks post-fall. Instructor Graxall paused outside the auxiliary gym. Inside, Alex was sparring not wildly, but with calculated precision against a drone set to medium difficulty. 2 swords moved in elegant arcs. The third stayed clamped, stable, jabbing forward when needed. Still imperfect, still rough. But functional. Graxall watched for a moment longer, then walked away, silently updating the next week's lesson plan. 12 weeks in, the Academy's night cycle had become Alex's second home. The main training hall powered down after curfew, but the auxiliary chamber in subsection D didn't enforce those hours, not officially. It was mostly used by nocturnal species or insomniacs from low-gravity worlds, and no one cared if one injured Earthborn trained alone under dim blue overheads. Alex tightened the strap on his jaw guard. It wasn't elegant, just a modified grappling mouthpiece with a slot filed into it to hold the flat of a practice blade. He was still using the same polysteel swords, though now balanced better to compensate for the mouth held one's awkward weight. The left arm had mostly recovered. Range of motion was back, but strength lagged behind. The early work had been miserable. Every motion felt off kilter. The third blade constantly dipped too low or veered to the side. His jaw ached for hours. But progress, no matter how small, had a rhythm. Tonight, that rhythm hummed. Alex stepped forward, slicing right with a shoulder-level sweep, pivoted his back foot, brought the left-hand blade into a low guard, and angled his chin downward, driving the mouth blade forward. The move wasn't beautiful, but it was stable, clean. He stopped, checked his posture in the mirror, then began again. Behind him, a door slid open. I hope you sanitized that mouthpiece. The voice was amused, soft alien, but clear. He turned his head carefully. It was Saraval, the same triathlete cadet who, 13 weeks earlier, had mimed chewing motions during Alex's fall. Her forearms were folded, 2 of them cradling a padded staff. She leaned against the wall, her tall frame relaxed. You've been here every 3rd cycle, she said, for the last 2 months. Someone took a break from sarcasm long enough to be curious. Alex removed the mouth blade and set it down. Let me guess. You're here to offer more dental critiques. I'm here to spar. He blinked. What? Saraval shrugged. Instructor Graxall's next unit is on unorthodox stances. You're the only one using something that shouldn't work, but somehow kind of does. Also, I owe you. For mocking me? For proving me wrong. She stepped forward, dropping into a light crouch. I'll go easy. Please don't. Week 14. It wasn't a clean climb. There were still nights he left the gym limping. Once, his jaw clicked so painfully he thought he'd dislocated it. X-ray scans showed only soft tissue stress, no damage, but enough inflammation that Vesson assigned him a week off the mouth blade. That week, he trained footwork instead, Movements timed to music, stuttered beats, slow-motion katas in zero-G simulation rooms where he had to maintain balance without gravity's guidance. He fell often, bruised worse, but his center line improved. By week 16, his reaction time had improved enough that the sparring drones had to be manually adjusted to keep up. By week 18, cadets started showing up early to watch. He didn't speak much during training anymore. His focus sharpened, tunneled. He took tips silently, processed them later. His bunkmate, a quiet water-born Zin named Cole, sometimes found Alex asleep with his jaw guard still in place and training sword clutched in his left hand. "You're not chasing mastery," Cole said one morning. "You're chasing the impossible like it owes you money." Alex chuckled hoarsely. "Maybe it does." Week 21, Biomech Lab 3. "Sit still," the Zarian researcher muttered. Alex flinched as the scanning arc buzzed down his spine. The lab was sterile, cool, and lined with exoskeletal mock-ups and neural interface rigs. After weeks of requests, he'd finally convinced the biomech department to evaluate his limits. "You're asking your neck and jaw to behave like a forelimb," said Dr. Narek, her 6 eyes flicking between readouts. "Even with neural rerouting, your control threshold's below any accepted standard. This isn't sustainable." "Doesn't have to be," Alex replied. "Just has to be good enough for one perfect demonstration." "You're planning to present this?" she asked. He nodded. "End of year, grand demo." Narek tapped her notes. "I'd recommend a support harness. Reduce cervical load, but you'll sacrifice rotation. I'll train both ways." She stared at him for a moment, antennae flicking. "Why go this far?" Alex hesitated. "Because someone said it couldn't be done, and because every time I think about quitting, I remember how it felt lying on that mat, breath gone, everyone laughing. And I'm not done with that moment yet." Week 24. A breakthrough. During a high-intensity spar with Saraval, Alex finally landed a triple blade sequence right slash to deflect, left low guard to block the return, mouth thrust directly to chest. The impact wasn't strong, but the move flowed. No pause. No imbalance. Saraval blinked and stepped back, her forehead ridges twitching. That actually worked. He dropped his stance, panting. "I felt it. Like a groove." "You look like you were doing 3 jobs with one brain." "I am." I'll be honest, I still think it's madness, but it's kind of elegant now, like watching someone juggle grenades and survive." Alex grinned. High praise. "I didn't say they were unarmed grenades." Week 28, Instructor Graxol's office. The room was all edges. No soft furniture, no comfort, just metal and light. Graxol stood before a projected schedule of the grand demonstration. He hadn't turned when Alex entered. "You wish to present?" Graxol asked. "Yes, sir." The instructor gestured at the schedule. "You would be the final performance slot." Alex didn't flinch. "I'll take it." Graxol finally turned. His expression was unreadable. "I have watched your progress. I've amended my stance in private, but public recognition carries risk. If you fail..." "I know." "Do you?" Alex met his gaze. "This isn't about ego. I'm not trying to prove you wrong. I'm trying to prove that the limit was never real." There was a pause. Graxol nodded once. "Then make sure your last step off that mat is upright." Night before the grand demonstration. Alex sat alone in the empty sparring hall, sword across his knees, the mouthpiece beside him. His body ached. Not sharply, but in a deep, seasoned way. Scars were internal micro-tears, stretched ligaments, tension in his lower back that would probably never fully fade. He'd spent hours with Vesson reviewing the medical risks. His jaw joint had developed a subtle click. His molars were worn flat in spots. His shoulders still flared after high-torque swings. None of it stopped him. He pulled a small cloth bundle from his duffel. Inside was a wooden tsuka, the hilt of a centuries-old katana, passed down through his mother's line. The blade itself had been lost generations ago, but the grip remained, worn smooth in places. Wrapped in fraying ray skin, he held it reverently. Then he whispered, "Let's see if legends run in the blood." The grand demonstration began at mid-cycle, under the twin moons of Sereth's orbit, casting pale lavender hues across the open-air amphitheater. Rows of cadets, instructors, and dignitaries from over 20 planetary systems filled the tiered seats, their faces aglow with anticipation. The air was heavy with the scent of ionized steel and crisp linen uniforms. It was the Academy's most celebrated tradition, the day when raw recruits revealed who they had become. Each performance had its moment. A Glavari student wielded twin plasma chains in a coordinated whirlwind. A Telvoth tactician performed a 4-stage simulation against AI drones, her movements so calculated it felt choreographed. Applause came in varying waves, respectful, impressed, even stunned. But one name hadn't been called yet. Alex stood alone beneath the staging canopy, swords already secured. His shoulder ached mildly under the compression brace, hidden beneath his tunic, but the real tension sat between his molars. The modified mouthguard held the third blade, now lightened by half a kilo and reinforced at the tang. A compromise. Not optimal for damage, but built for movement. Instructor Graxol's voice echoed across the amphitheater. Our final demonstration this cycle comes from Earth. Cadet Alexander Grant will present a custom hybrid kata, self-designed. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some perked up, some leaned back skeptically. A few alien cadets chuckled, those who remembered that first fall. Alex stepped into the arena. The mat was larger than any he'd trained on. Markings glowed faint blue at the edges, denoting boundaries and safe zones. He walked to center, bowed deeply to the audience, then raised all 3 weapons in turn. The crowd hushed. Then he moved. The first strike was clean, a downward cut with the right hand blade, pivoting into a smooth lateral guard with the left. He dropped into a low stance, twisting his torso while thrusting the mouth blade forward. The sequence flowed like a tide, one weapon always moving, the others setting up the next rhythm. He rotated into a turn, keeping his core tight, feet light. 2 swords rose to intercept imaginary blows from opposite angles, and the third stabbed forward in a compact jab. No flailing, no chaos. Just form. Powerful, deliberate, unbelievably fast. The kata was 7 minutes long, structured in segments: offense, defense, redirect, counter. Each passage reflected the hard-earned balance he had developed, every movement compensating for anatomical limits, every rotation designed to avoid overextending the shoulder or destabilizing the neck. It wasn't beautiful by classic standards, but it was fluid, alive. At minute 5, he introduced aerial footwork, using a brief lift from the arena's central gravity null field to simulate combat in 0G. It required adjusting for torque, breath control, and strict timing between his strikes. A lesser fighter would have drifted, tumbled. Alex didn't. He landed clean. Then, with one final burst of movement, he drew all 3 blades into a high arc, crossed them at center line, and brought them down in synchronized form. Stillness. He held his final pose, chest rising with every breath, the mouth blade steady despite the tremor creeping into his jaw. The crowd didn't react at first, not because they were unimpressed, but because they were too stunned to speak. Then the applause came. It started on the left, cadets pounding the seats with palms, then spread outward. Whistles, cheers, a high-pitched resonance from the Xentari that meant honor. Even the dignitaries stood. Alex slowly straightened. Blood throbbed in his shoulder. His neck muscles screamed, but he smiled. Instructor Graxol approached from the judge's platform. The older warrior didn't speak for a long moment. He simply stood there, watching the human cadet breathe through pain and triumph. Then, without flourish, Graxol reached up and tapped his holopad. A single line of code blinked out from his curriculum file. No species can dual-wield effectively was gone. I was wrong, Graxol said. Alex nodded. You were right, until I wasn't. That drew a rare smile from Graxol. So, what do we call this style? Alex thought for a moment, then lifted the now bitten hilt from his mouth and said quietly, Just call it Grant style. 1 week later. The Academy updated its combat course listings. Under human specializations, a new entry appeared. Grant style, combat, tree blade variant, human only. Status, optional. Requires clearance from medical and biomech departments. Instructor note. Extreme dedication and anatomical limits must be acknowledged. By the dormitory wing, Alex stood reading the listing when a first-year cadet approached. She was thin, tall, with skin that shimmered faintly like oil on water. A Zoralin. "You're the one with the 3 swords?" she asked. He nodded. "Is it actually usable, or just performance?" Alex looked at her. "It's dangerous, it's exhausting, it's not for everyone. But it's possible?" He smiled, jaw still sore. "Define can't." 2 years later. Galactic Coalition Forces, Outer Rim Forward Base. General Alexander Grant adjusted the straps on his chest rig and stepped onto the landing pad. The soldiers waiting were a mixed platoon. Humans, Norkel, Ivanari. A field commander greeted him. "They said you'd retired," the commander said. "I did. For 6 months. Got bored. We've integrated your technique into the new close-quarters drills." One of our Threxian officers nearly bit off his own tongue. Alex winced. "Tell him to keep the blade farther forward. And file down the mouth grip." Behind him, 3 cadets trained under a supervisor. One wielded 2 swords and a mouth stabilizer, mimicking the sequence from the demonstration years ago. Still clumsy. Still learning. Alex watched them. "They're going to need new rules." The commander nodded. "You broke the old ones." He turned to go. In the corner of the base courtyard, a plaque caught the late sun. Bronze, worn slightly by wind and time. The engraving read, "Wine. Anyone. Adaptability is the sharpest blade. Alex Grant, General, CCF." Underneath, in smaller text, "Define can't." The Intergalactic Combat Academy had expanded in the years since Alex's graduation. The main training compound now stretched over 2 domes, with new zero-G arenas and a pressure-modulated chamber for aquatic and vapor-borne species. But one structure remained unchanged, the original auxiliary gym in subsection D. It was early morning unofficial hours when Alex returned. His boots echoed faintly as he stepped inside. The scent of old sweat and training foam hadn't changed. Neither had the dim overheads or the faded warning labels near the drone racks. He set his travel bag down slowly. His right shoulder tensed on instinct. A familiar stiffness still lingered. If he lifted past a certain angle, he didn't mind. It kept the memory sharp. He reached into the bag and pulled out the same 3 swords he trained with during his cadet years. Not replicas. The originals. The blade once gripped between his teeth still bore the shallow wear marks from years of imperfect handling. The left-hand sword had a different balance, now slightly refitted after his rotator cuff procedure. The right remained untouched, smooth and sure, like a metronome in his hand. He didn't move immediately. Instead, he sat on the bench, watching. A pair of cadets had already claimed the far side of the mat. They hadn't seen him enter. The taller one, a blue-skinned Delvani, wielded twin plasma short blades. The other, a young Earthborn, maybe 19, was working through a crude imitation of the 3-sword stance. The mouth blade kept slipping. His stances were uneven. Alex saw the exhaustion in the kid's shoulders. The same kind of frustration he'd felt, night after night, when nothing worked. He remembered the cold grip of failure, the sting of jaw cramps, the 1,000 tiny humiliations. It had taken months to turn the chaos into craft, years to make it art. The kid dropped all 3 blades and cursed under his breath. Alex stood, crossed the mat. The Delvani cadet noticed first and tapped his partner's shoulder. The Earthborn looked up and froze. You're General Grant." Alex nodded. The cadet scrambled to attention. "Sir, I didn't mean to, I was just trying to." "You're not doing it wrong," Alex said. The cadet blinked. "I'm not?" "You're doing it early, which means you're going to do it better than I ever could." He reached down and picked up the kid's fallen mouth blade. The guard was poorly modified, too thin, no bite tension. It would never hold. "You want advice?" Alex asked. The cadet nodded so hard his neck wobbled. "Start with breathing. Don't fight the swords. Let them move around you. Think like you've got 3 limbs and no time to argue which one should lead. I've been trying to copy your demo video. Don't. That routine was built for my injuries, my limits. Make your own." The cadet hesitated, then asked softly, "Did it hurt, training with your jaw like that? Everyone says you never flinched." Alex grinned. "I flinched plenty. I just flinched in private." He handed back the blade. "Get better guards, shorten your step arc. Practice with 2 until your spine forgets which side's dominant, then come back to 3, you'll know when you're ready." The kid stared down at the weapon, stunned. Alex turned to leave. But the cadet's voice stopped him. "Wait, what did it feel like? The first time it worked?" Alex paused. His hand flexed at his side. "It felt like silence," he said. "Not outside, inside. Like the noise in my head finally shut up, just for a second." Then he walked out. Later. That cycle. Alex sat across from Sarival at a cafe just outside the Academy's eastern tower. She was now a close-quarters instructor, scarred from a dozen campaigns, but still faster than most sentients in her weight class. She sipped something viscous and green. "They've got a simulation now," she said, "for your style. I've heard it's glitchy. Students are biting clean through the foam blades. One shattered a molar. Vessen's running out of dental regenerators." Alex winced. "Oof, tell her I said sorry." Sarival chuckled. "You know what I think? I think it was never really about the swords." "No?" "No, I think it was about being told no, about hearing can't and deciding that wasn't your problem." Alex tilted his head. "I mean, that too. But mostly, I just hated the feeling of laying flat on that mat while the whole room laughed." Sarival looked at him. Really looked. "You ever think about why you didn't quit?" Alex didn't answer right away. He tapped a rhythm on the side of his mug with a calloused finger. Then said, "Because if I had, it'd mean they were right. And now? Now I know they weren't." She raised her mug. "To gravity-defying, jaw-destroying insanity." He clinked his glass against hers. "To the long road to almost." Final cycle of the term. The Academy held its traditional Hall of Honors closing ceremony. Names were engraved, titles awarded. Among the new inscriptions, near the east archway, a display had been installed. A holographic projection of Alex's final kata played on a continuous loop, paired with his biomech and medical readouts, showcasing not just the art, but the toll it took to create it. Below the display, a new plaque read, "Grant Style, Combat. Invented by Cadet Alexander Grant. Demonstrated year 231, Earth Standard. Pain teaches, balance remembers." Next to it, etched faintly beneath the text, a second line in stylized Old Terran script. "Define, can't." Years later, Galactic Training Symposium, Orbit of Ral Vex. Alex sat quietly in a stadium box as dozens of species filled the floor of the arena. Today, the Tri-Limb Combat Showcase was on display. He wasn't presenting, he wasn't even listed. But one section of the program stood out. Demonstration 7C. Multi-limb weapon synchronization across biologies. Inspired by human tri-blade methodology, an insectoid warrior with 4 limbs twirled 3 plasma rods and a tail blade in a fluid pattern. A sentient gas cloud entity simulated 4 weapon tendrils using ion torque beams. No one copied Alex's exact method, none needed to. He had cracked open a door, and now the galaxy was walking through it. He leaned back, breathed deep.